Okay, today we're looking at lesson 9-5, area and circumference of circles. Today's learning intention, I will learn how to solve their circumference and area of a circle. All right, so first we're going to start by going over some of the definitions of the parts of the circle, and we're going to do that by using this circle to help. So the first thing is, a circle is the set of all points the same distance from a given point. And that given point being the center. So we have the center and we have this point, and they're all the same distance from the center. There could be a point down here. They're all the same distance from the center. And there's a way to label it, and we would label it this. Circle C. C being the center point. Therefore, that's how we're going to name the circle. Diameter is the distance across the circle through the center. So with that being said, the distance across through the center, C being the center, and it's all the way from here to here. So this diameter would be segment AB. The radius is the distance from the center point on the circle. So it's from here, this is the center point, to the circle. The center point to the circle. The radius will always be the same for all of this. Center point to the circle. Okay, so a couple different examples would be segment CB, CD, and CA. Okay, so the radius is half the diameter, and another way to say it is the diameter is twice the radius. So if this is the diameter, the radius is half of it. So if the diameter was 10, the radius would be 5. Okay, the circumference is the distance around the circle. And this is kind of like a perimeter for circles. So like when we did polygons, we would add up all the sides to get our perimeter. Well, circles don't have sides. So we have a formula we can use to help us find the circumference. And it is C equals 2 pi r. And we have that up here. And I'm going to take a note that we can also call this pi times diameter. Because if you look, 2 times your radius is your diameter. Okay, so either one of these formulas works for circumference. And I'll write it here as well. C equals pi times diameter. A central angle is an angle whose vertex is the center of a circle. So once again, back at the center, so the central angle would be BCD, or BCA would be an example, so we'll go ahead and write those. Angle BCD, angle BCA. And notice my vertex is always in the middle, okay? A sector is a region or area of a circle determined by 2 radii and part of the circle. And so when we say 2 radii, this might be a radius, and this is a radius, and then we have these points right here and right here, and this is what makes the sector. And that's why it says it's kind of like a piece of pizza. And the way we would label these is with a little arc sign for sector, and this would be sector BD. Or you could have a sector here with a radii, a radius and a radius with B and A, and this could be a sector. So we could have sector BD. Okay, moving on. I would like to take a minute right now. I want everybody to get out their calculators, and let's try to find the pi button. If you have a TI-30, it's going to be on the left-hand side. So if you find the second button on the left hand and go 1, 2, 3, 4 down, you'll find a button that looks like this symbol here for pi. If you have a TI-83 or TI-84, it's on the right-hand side. And it is, if you find your clear button, it's the one down from it. However, it's above it, so in order to hit pi, you have to hit the second button and then pi. If you have any questions on that, you'll have to come ask. Okay, let's dive into number 1. And I'm going to rewrite my formulas up here at the top. So the area of a circle is pi r squared, and circumference is 2 pi r, or we can use pi times diameter. Okay, so let's look at number 1, area. So if we remember the formula for area, whoops. Okay, area equals, well, pi, and r we don't know. So we'll look up here, and this is our radius of 5 squared. So 5 squared is 25, and that's pi. And if we go back up and look at these directions, it's very important to note that it says to give the answers in terms of pi and rounded to the nearest tenth. So in terms of pi, we would just leave it like this, 25 pi centimeters squared. And then the rounded answer in your calculator would just be 25 pi. And you should come up with 78.5. And this is still centimeters squared. Okay, circumference, if we look, we can use either formula. I like to use this one a lot, pi times diameter. Remember, this is my radius of 5. And so my diameter is actually 10 because it's twice the radius. So if I use 10, it's pi d. And so in terms of pi, it's just going to be 10 pi centimeters. And in your calculator, if you round it, you should come up with 31.1 centimeters. Okay, number 2. Once again, area. A equals pi, and then our radius squared. Well, our radius is here. It's 10 squared. 10 squared is 100, and then pi. So in terms of pi, this is just 100 pi inches squared. And the rounded version would be 314.2 inches squared. Make sure we're rounding to the nearest tenth like the directions are asking for. And then the other thing I want to point out is when we leave it in terms of pi, that's the most real we're going to get. That's the most exact number we're going to get. This has approximation marks because notice we're rounding. This is a rounded number. Okay, so the circumference on this is pi. Once again, I'm using diameter times diameter, and my diameter, if my radius is 10, my diameter would be 20. So in terms of pi, this is 20 pi inches, and if you put 20 pi in your calculator and round it to the nearest tenth, you should get 62.8 inches. All right, let's look at number 3. Once again, the area. Area is pi r squared, so there's pi. My radius is 7 squared. Okay, so 7 squared is 49, and we have pi. So in terms of pi, this is 49 pi meters squared. And if you put this in your calculator just like that, rounded, it's 153.9 meters squared. Okay, so circumference, remember if we use pi times diameter, so pi, my radius is 7, so my diameter is 14. So in terms of pi, this is 14 pi meters. And put 14 pi in your calculator, and you get 44. And rounded, there is no tenth, rounded to 44 meters. Okay, let's look at 14. So just a little note here. This time it's giving me a diameter and not a radius. So my radius is half the diameter. So from here to here is my radius. So this would be 15. Now I would like for you to stop the video and try to do 14 on your own. All right, go ahead and check your answers and see how you did. And let's move on to number 5. All right, so notice number 5 is like a half circle here. We still will figure radius the same way. My diameter is here. Half of that is my radius, so my radius is 6. And so we're going to figure everything using the same formulas, just like we would if it's a whole circle. But because it's a half circle, we can just take those answers and literally just divide them by 2. Okay, so let's look. The area, the formula is pi r squared. So pi, my radius is 6 squared. Okay, so I end up with 36 pi for my answer, but we need to divide it by 2. And 36 divided by 2 is 18. And in terms of pi, we'll leave it like that. So then if you put this in your calculator, 18 pi, you should come up with 56.5, and that's rounded to the nearest tenth. Okay, moving on to circumference. Remember, it's pi d, so pi and my diameter would be twice of the radius, so 6 and 6 is 12, pi d, and then we divide it by 2, and 12 divided by 2 is 6 pi. So in terms of pi, it is 6 pi, and notice how the answer once has the approximation points, the approximation mark, so you put 6 pi in your calculator, and you should get 18.8 meters. And these, sorry, on the area that's supposed to be squared. Okay, so I want you to do number 6 the same way. Remember, figure it like you did above, like a circle, and then divide your answer by 2. All right, go ahead and check your answers and see how you did. Okay, moving on to the back. Right, 7 through 10, it says use the given measurement to find the radius and diameter. So we're going to find radius and diameter with what it gives us. This time we're using words and not pictures. So let's look at number 1. Okay, the area of a circle is 25 pi centimeters squared. So once again, I'm going to write my formulas up above. Area pi r squared, and circumference is 2 pi r. I'm going to make that a little r. Or we can use pi times diameter. Either one. Okay. So for my first one, area of a circle. Well, let's identify my formula. My formula is A equals pi r squared. So let's fill in what we know. It's telling us that my A is 25 pi. It tells me that right here. Okay? And then my formula, we're going to go ahead and solve for the r, radius. So we need to get r by himself. So the first thing in order of operations, or for solving this equation, would be to divide by pi. And if I do it on this side, I have to do it on this side. That is what allows these to cancel to start to get r by himself. These will also cancel, so I'm left with 25 equals r squared. Now, if you remember, the next step to get r by himself is getting rid of the square, and you do that by taking the square root. So I'm left with r equals 25. So r over here is, the square root of 25, I'm sorry, is 5. So my r over here is 5 centimeters. And if you remember, we have said that the diameter is twice the radius. So that would make my diameter 10 centimeters. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing on number 8. Okay, so we know the formula, pi r squared, and this time it gives me my A of 452.39. Notice there's no pi behind it this time. Equals my formula, which is pi r squared. So once again, getting r by itself, the first thing we have to do is divide by 5, or divide by pi. Do it on this side, you got to do it on that side. These will cancel, and if you put 452.39 divided by pi in your calculator, I think you get something like, it's like 144.000 and then some numbers. So on this, 144 is fine. We're fine with just the 144, because if we're rounding to the nearest tenth, it'll be 144 anyway. So 144 equals r squared, and then the final step is square rooting the r squared. Square root of 144 is 12. So our radius here is 12 meters. If my radius is 12, my diameter is twice that, 24. Okay, now we're going to do it with circumference. This time we're using the formula for circumference. We can either use this formula or this formula. It does not matter. So if I have my circumference, and if we use pi times diameter, that's fine. We can use either one. So my circumference is 24 pi equals pi times diameter. This time in this formula, if we were doing 2 pi r, we'd be solving for r. But we're doing pi d, so we're going to solve for d first. And the first thing we need to do to get the d by itself is divide by pi. If we do it over here, we got to do it over here. That allows those to cancel. If you notice, they also cancel over here, and I'm left with 24. So my diameter is 24, and my unit is centimeters. So now if my diameter is 24, my radius is half of that, which is 12. Okay, so now we're using circumference again, and this time it gives me a circumference of 37.7. There is no pi behind it, equals, if we use pi times diameter, it doesn't matter, we'll just be solving for d instead of r. And to get d by itself, we divide by pi, and you should be left with I think it's 12. This is inches, so my radius is half that, which would be 6. All right, doing good. Just a little bit left. Now we're going to find the area of the shaded region. Okay, shaded region meaning this part. Okay, and the way we can do that is we can find the area of the whole thing. The whole thing, and then we can find the area of just the circle. And if we subtract the circle from the whole thing, it should leave us with the shaded region. So if you remember, the whole thing is a rectangle, and to find the area of that, it's just base times height. So that'd be 10 times 4. So the area of the rectangle is just 10 times 4, and that equals 40. So the area of the whole thing is 40. Okay. All right, now let's find the area of the circle. Okay, and remember, pi r squared is our formula, so pi. And let's look at our radius. Let's see if there's a way we can find it. We know that this is 4 right here. So if we move that over, this is also 4. So our radius would stop here in the middle, and it would be 2, half of 4. So pi radius squared, so this is 4 pi. So 4 pi inches squared. Now, to find the area of the shaded area, you're just going to take 40 minus 4 pi. And if you put that in your calculator, you should come up with 27.4 inches squared. Okay, so let's look at B. Same thing, only we have a half circle. So we're going to find the area of the whole thing. We're going to find the area of this and subtract it to find the shaded part. Okay, so once again, the area of my rectangle, or the whole thing, is going to be base times height. So 12 times 6 equals 72. So the area of the whole thing is 72 feet squared. Okay, now we need to find the area of this half circle here. And if you remember, make a half circle, we do that by finding the area of the circle and dividing it by 2, just like we did with these down here. So area is pi r squared. My radius, well, my diameter is 6, so we can figure that my radius is 3. Okay, so 3 squared is 9. Okay, and then we have to divide that by 2 because we have a half circle. So 9 divided by 2 is 4.5. We have 4.5 pi. So 4.5 pi feet squared. So now to find the area of the shaded part, we take the whole thing, which is 72, minus 4.5 pi, and let's see what we get. Okay, and you should have came up with something like 57.9 feet squared. All right, very good.